Welcome back, conference delegates. I hope you've enjoyed the break that we had for our lunch. We are now proceeding with session 2A, which is a virtual address and question and answers by CPA headquarters. I'd like to acknowledge our online participants and encourage their engagement as well. And just a reminder that questions can be submitted via the attendee app by all attendees during the address, with answers to be facilitated at the end of the presentation. In-person attendees may also ask questions during the appropriate time from the table of the House in the centre of the chamber. I would like to start by welcoming each panellist from CPA HQ, Mr Ian Liddell-Granger, Acting Chairperson. Mr Liddell-Granger is a member of the UK Parliament, first elected in 2001, and he has served on many parliamentary committees and has been involved with the CPA for a number of years. Mr Stephen Twigg, Secretary-General, CPA Headquarters. Mr Twigg took up his position as the 8th Secretary-General of the CPA on the 1st of August 2020. He is a former UK parliamentarian from 1997 to 2005, Enfield Southgate, and from 2010 to 2019, Liverpool West Derby. During his parliamentary career, he held several senior positions. We also have Mr Geoffrey Hyland, Communications Manager for CPA Headquarters. He is the editor of the Parliamentarian. He has extensive experience in PR and marketing. And we also have Ms Lydia Buchanan, Deputy Head of Programs, Bilateral Engagement, CPA Headquarters. Ms Buchanan joined the CPA Headquarters Secretariat in 2020, working on parliamentary strengthening on a bilateral basis. Prior to that, she spent 2 years at CPA UK as a Programs Officer, and prior to this, worked as the Clerk of the Council for the Legislative Assembly of St Helena, which is where her keen interest for CPA small branches and parliamentary strengthening primarily began. I will now hand over to CPA Headquarters.
Thank you very much indeed, Speaker Arkit, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning from London. We are delighted as a team to join you for the discussion here today. I want to start by remembering our late Madam Chairperson, the Honourable Emilia Monjowa Lithaka, the former Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Cameroon, who very sadly passed away in April. Upon her sad and untimely death, the acting vice chairperson at the time automatically under our rules became the acting chairperson, and he, as you have said, is the Honourable Ian Liddell-Granger, Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom. Ian unfortunately is not able to join us live today, but yesterday he recorded a video message, and I'd like now to introduce the video message from our acting chairperson.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And can I say what an absolute delight it is to be able to join you virtually at this enormously important conference. Can I first of all thank the Honourable Anana Colisi, and if I've got that wrong, I do apologise, President of the Legislative Council, and the Honourable Michelle Roberts, who is MLA, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, for inviting me to speak with you today. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to attend this session. And I'd obviously like to be with you at the meeting in person. At the moment, obviously, I can't. And I'm very, very grateful, as always, to the Western Australia branch for facilitating this marvellous hybrid Australian Pacific Regional Conference. And again, if I may say, for joining you virtually. At the moment, as you can imagine, I'm at COP. We are doing an enormous amount here to try and get the message across that the Commonwealth has a very, very large role to play in this incredible challenge of climate change. I'm afraid it is a testament to the unusual times we find ourselves in and the need to evolve and adapt the ways that we work. And we are able to meet like this, which we wouldn't have been able to do some time ago. An organisation like this has many parliamentary delegations and parliaments who have been involved in huge change in the last couple of years. Since March, the majority of our CPA programmes have been delivered virtually. And as you'll know, the 65th Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference has been postponed to August 22. In the hope all branches will be able to join us physically in Halifax, in Nova Scotia. We can't wait to see all our friends and also dare I say, the wonderful family of the Commonwealth. Innovation and transformation have been key, and we have looked to embark on new initiatives such as the Parliamentary Academy, which is going very well, which we'll hear more about later, and expand our extended opportunities to all membership contexts through the COVID crisis and the uncertainty of ever-changing parameters in which we found ourselves in. Indeed, the CPA celebrates its 110th anniversary this year, and we can look back at our organisation's achievements, and we can also look at the value of this at the moment of reflection to consider how the CPA, the Commonwealth, can continue to evolve in the future and retain our principles and practices, knowing that while navigation and new challenges will face us, we will face them. And while this awful pandemic has put up obstacles, it has shown our wonderful family how we can work together, communicate together, and still be great friends together, even the medium of this virtual world we live in. It has been a learning curve for all of us, some of us more so than others, and I think there may be an age thing in that, as I find myself, but it has enabled innovative change for us to continue working. And to that end, I must thank the staff of all our branches and all our legislators to be able to do these things, because they have been fantastic. I am looking forward to seeing you all soon. I hope the conference is a great success. I will certainly try and go to join when I can, and I can assure you, all friends, all colleagues, that the work we're doing at COP is on behalf of all of us, and I look forward to being able to speak on behalf of the Commonwealth here in Glasgow. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. God bless you all, and please take care. And we look forward to meeting in person in Halifax in 22. Thank you so much for letting me join you today. My great respect to all of you and all the honourable speakers, and also to all of you. Take care. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ian. And let me start my remarks by echoing Ian's thanks to the Western Australia branch of the CPA for hosting this hybrid conference, bringing together the Australian and Pacific regions of the CPA, and in particular to thank the two presiding officers, the joint presidents of the CPA branch, the Honourable Alana Cloesi and the Honourable Michelle Hopkins Roberts, for their leadership of the branch. Your theme for this conference, Parliaments, People and Pandemics, speaks really to the challenges that we face across the CPA and throughout the world today. As was said by Speaker Arkit when she kindly introduced me earlier, I joined the CPA as Secretary General in August of last year, really at the height of the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think it's always important for us to reflect on this time, to think of those who have lost their lives to COVID, those who have lost loved ones to COVID, those who are living with COVID today, but also to reflect on the wider impact that the pandemic has had on communities, how it has exacerbated existing patterns of inequality, the effect on public health, the effect on children and young people and their opportunities for education. Because through that reflection, hopefully, we will be able to learn as we seek to build back after COVID and create a better world in the future, in line with the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Having started when I did, I've mostly been working from home. This has become, in many ways, the norm for our working. And I think there is a lot that we can learn from this period, and I'll say a little more about that in a moment. When I started, one of my first priorities was to work on a new strategic plan for the CPA. And we had a consultation that was being conducted around this time last year, and I was delighted with the wide range of responses that we had from branches, from individual parliamentarians and parliamentary staff, but also from external organisations who wanted to have an input into what the priorities for the CPA would be from 2022 to 2025. And I'd like to thank everyone in the Pacific and Australia regions who responded to that consultation, which enabled us to put together a strategic plan that really drew on the diversity of experience across the CPA's membership. That plan was agreed by our International EXCO Executive Committee in March of this year, published in May, and we will implement it from next year. As Ian said, we celebrate our 110th anniversary of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association this year. And what I want us to do is to learn from those 110 years, but also to learn from this past 18 months to 2 years as we shape a CPA that can be relevant to the needs of parliaments, parliamentarians and parliamentary staff over the coming months and years. I think a key role for this organisation has always been to provide practical support for our members, for the parliaments, for the parliamentary staff, for the parliamentarians, so that you can be as effective as possible in your job, in scrutiny, in oversight, accountability of governments, championing the independence of parliaments and the role that parliaments crucially play in public life, as well as in the accountability of the executive, but also learning from the particular time that we've had over this last 18 months or so. How can we use, as we are today, technology and innovation in order to learn lessons from this period? And then, of course, the challenge, the ongoing challenge in all parts of the Commonwealth of how we can maintain and strengthen the relevance of parliaments, how parliaments reflect their communities, how they could better reflect the communities that they serve. And crucial to all of this is how well we communicate with each other, how far you know what we're doing, how far we know what you're doing, and how we can learn between the different branches within regions and between regions. And that's why I'm delighted that after my remarks, I'll be introducing our communications manager and editor of the Parliamentarian, Jeff, who will be speaking about communication and what more we can do to strengthen that. Mutual learning from each other is at the heart of what the CPA is all about. And that is why one of the most exciting, new and innovative things that we've done for a very long time is our new online CPA Parliamentary Academy, led by my colleague Lydia Buchanan. And Lydia today will be presenting, setting out the work of the Academy, setting out some of the exciting opportunities that the Academy has for all of our members, but also wanting to hear your views and suggestions as we further expand the Academy's work. One of our great strengths, I think, is the diversity of our membership. And I'm very pleased that this year we celebrate the 40th anniversary of CPA's Small Branches Network, a network for those branches that have a population of 500,000 or less. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank two wonderful women, the Honourable Nikki Rattle, the former Speaker of the Cook Islands, who chaired the Small Branches Network until she stepped down from Parliament earlier this year, and then the Honourable Joy Birch, who immediately stepped in as the acting chair of Small Branches. And Joy, I know, has spoken already at the conference today and is a brilliant champion for small branches. In his address, Ian spoke about COP26 and the challenges of climate change that are rightly in the headlines this week. And it's in no small part down to that network of small branches that climate change and sustainable development have moved up the agenda of the CPA in recent years. That is reflected in our strategic plan, where climate change and sustainable development is one of the key priority cross-cutting themes for the CPA for this next 4-year period. And then, of course, we have our network of women parliamentarians, the CWP, providing a voice for women within the CPA, a voice for women parliamentarians, but also a focus for work to ensure that parliaments are gender sensitive, a focus for work to tackle issues of harassment and online abuse that we know, sadly, tragically, are increasingly afflicting parliaments across the world, and particularly affect women parliamentarians and other women in public life and pushing for equality of representation for women in parliaments at every level and in every corner of the Commonwealth. And then thirdly, our newest network, the Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities Network. There to represent the parliamentarians with disabilities, but they're also to provide a voice for disability in the broader debates of the CPA and the work of parliaments, to encourage inclusion, foster that, but also to seek greater engagement with organisations that represent persons with disabilities, both at a national and subnational level, but also internationally as well. I mentioned learning from COVID, and I want to draw my remarks towards a close by saying a little bit more about that. This is a hybrid conference, bringing together those of you that are in the chamber in Western Australia with others joining remotely from across the two regions. And I think we can learn a lot from what you're doing this week with your hybrid conference. We've already now held our International Exco virtually 3 times, and I think very successfully, engaging members across the Commonwealth on a virtual platform. Lydia works as deputy head of our programmes team within the CPA, and many of the programmes that traditionally have been delivered in person, we've been able to deliver either virtually or in a hybrid format. And we want to look to how much of that we can retain going forward. There are many good reasons to seek to retain at least elements of the virtual or hybrid platforms. There is a balance here to get right. We can engage a larger number of our members by sometimes holding our events and programs virtually or in a hybrid format. It can be a more effective use of resources by limiting expenditure on travel. It can be good for the climate because we're not going to fly around as much as we were before. But of course, we also recognise the value of meeting one another in person. And as the acting chairperson said in his video message just now, we are so looking forward in 2022 to bringing the parliamentarians of the Commonwealth together for what will be the first time in 3 years at the Commonwealth Parliamentarians Conference and General Assembly in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada, in August of next year. And I very much hope to see many of you in attendance as delegates and participants at that conference. I'm also delighted that the New South Wales branch has applied to host the Commonwealth Parliamentarians Conference in 2024 as part of their bicentenary celebrations, and that New Zealand will be hosting the next in-person Commonwealth Youth Parliament, hopefully in 2022. We've now held our Commonwealth Youth Parliament for young people aged 18 to 30 across the Commonwealth. We've held it virtually twice, most recently last month, very successfully, but we look forward to doing so in person in New Zealand next year. Let me finish before I introduce my colleagues with some further thanks. Can I thank the 2 regional teams led by Alex and Megan and their staffs for the amazing work that they do, and a particular shout out to Acacia, who has been working for us on secondment from the New Zealand branch. Can I thank all of your regional representatives on EXCO, on the Small Branches Steering Committee, the CWP Steering Committee, and the 2 regional champions for the Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities Network. And can I give a particular thanks to John Ajaka, who served as our vice chair until he stood down from the New South Wales Parliament earlier this year. I very much hope to have the opportunity to visit both regions in 2022. But in the meantime, it is a great pleasure to be here with you today as part of your conference. And I look forward to the opportunity later in this 1-hour session to listen to your points of view and answer any questions that you have. But at this stage, I will draw my remarks to a close and introduce my colleague, our communications manager and editor of the Parliamentarian, Geoffrey Hyland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General, and good afternoon to you all delegates. It's a great pleasure to join you all today. My job today is to talk to you a little bit about some of our communications work and how you may be able to get involved with some of the initiatives that the CPA are doing. I think our presentation is there for you. I'm hoping that you can see that now. So first, can we move to the first slide, please? So the CPA connects right across our news channels across the Commonwealth and features regularly in news, print and online right across the Commonwealth. First slide, please. As you can see here, we feature regularly in news, print and online, and feature our activities and news stories right across the Commonwealth, helping us to reach a much wider audience and introducing CPA activities to different audiences right across the Commonwealth. Next slide, please. So the CPA has launched its new website. It was launched this year in April 2021. And the CPA website has new and accessible features for our membership, bringing together a wide range of resources, information and online learning opportunities for Commonwealth parliamentarians, parliamentary staff and the wider public. Next slide, please. So amongst the vast information on our website, I just wanted to draw your attention to a few different things. We have a branch directory of all of the 180 CPA branches across our membership featured on our website, with information about all of the branches at national, subnational and territorial level. So it's a really useful resource for branches and parliamentarians and parliamentary staff to find out about the different branches across the CPA. We have links to the 3 networks that the Secretary General mentioned, our Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, our CPA small branches, and our Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities. Lots of information about our forthcoming seminars, conferences, events and activities, with an online registration portal to make it easier for delegates to register for our events. Information about our youth engagement work and resources for schools and young people about the Commonwealth. And you can also learn a lot more about how the CPA is governed and meet the members of the International Executive Committee. Next slide, please. So the CPA Library that features on our website has a huge number of resources available for parliamentarians and parliamentary staff. And these feature many toolkits, booklets, guides and resources on a wide range of topics and subjects. Some of them you can see there on the screen. So things like our climate change and small states toolkit. We've produced toolkits on COVID-19. We have information about our Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians and our codes of conduct and democratic benchmarks. So there's a huge number of resources available for parliamentarians and parliamentary staff through our website. We also offer something called the Commonwealth Parliamentary Research Service, or CPRS for short. This is a service for members of Parliament and parliamentary staff that can provide authoritative comparative information on Commonwealth parliaments via our global network. Examples of this type of research that we've done recently include maternity leave provisions for parliamentarians across the Commonwealth, the number of MPs under the age of 30, codes of conduct used in overseas territories, and COVID-19 activities undertaken by parliaments in the Commonwealth. And so it's a really useful resource that we encourage all members to utilise. Next slide, please. So I have the great pleasure of being the editor of the Parliamentarian, which is our flagship journal, has been established for over 100 years now. It's published by the CPA Quarterly as both print and online editions, and is circulated to all of our members right across our network. We produce both a print and digital edition of the publication. The print copies are distributed to each CPA branch and are available for you as members from your CPA branch secretaries. We also encourage members to utilise our digital edition, which is published via our website and on the ISU platform. And we're particularly encouraging use of the digital edition of the publication to help reduce our carbon footprint and the environmental impact of the publication. The publication features a wide range of articles written by members of Parliament, parliamentary staff, and international experts on many different global issues and parliamentary issues, with case studies from around the Commonwealth. And we encourage contributions from members of Parliament and parliamentary staff right across our networks. And so if you are interested in writing for the Parliamentarian, do please get in touch with us. We'd be very pleased to hear from you. We also have an editorial advisory board for the Parliamentarian. This helps us to look at the intellectual rigour of the journal and ensure that the journal is reaching a wide range of audiences. The representatives for the Australia region are Professor Ken Coggill from the state of Victoria, who I'm sure will be familiar to many of you. And we have a new youth member from Australia, Kaylee Aboud, who is the advisor to the Cabinet Secretary in New South Wales. In the Pacific region, our representative on the Editorial Advisory Board is the Honourable Poto Williams, Government Minister in New Zealand, who's been involved with the CPA and CWP for many years. And we're just awaiting the nomination of our youth representative from the Pacific region. So this outreach through our Editorial Advisory Board helps us to reach out to members and to a wider audience and ensure that the Parliamentarian is achieving its goals throughout each issue that we publish. Next slide, please. So a couple of new innovations for this year that we've launched from the CPA headquarters. We have a new podcast which has been launched this year. The podcast is called Parliamentary Conversations in the Commonwealth, and gives a voice to parliamentarians, civil society groups and activists across the Commonwealth to discuss democratic challenges and share their ideas on what can be done to solve them. Recent episodes include an episode on Indigenous peoples and political participation, which featured the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Guyana, who was one of the first Indigenous members of his Parliament, and a youth Indigenous activist from New Zealand, who spoke about the introduction of the Maori language in the Parliament. So some really interesting topics that we explore. The podcast is available through our website and all of the different podcast platforms. So we encourage you to look out for our new podcast and subscribe. We also are now publishing a new CPA blog. These blog posts provide news and background comment on a wide range of topics, giving a voice again to different people across our network. A recent example blog post was our Equality for All in the Commonwealth blog post, which was published to mark this year's against homophobia, transphobia and biphobia. Commonwealth parliamentarians from Australia Federal, South Australia and New South Wales, as well as New Zealand and Canada, shared their experiences through this blog, and that was promoted across our membership. So we also encourage members who might be interested in contributing to our blog. They're only short articles, so shouldn't take up too much of your time. But if you are interested in contributing, then do contact us. We're always happy to hear from you. Next slide, please. So a great way to stay in contact with what the CPA is doing is obviously through our social media, and we post regularly across all different channels, as you can see here: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Flickr, YouTube, you name it, we do it. So we have a whole range of different content, and you can regularly subscribe to us and hear what we're doing, and also share things that you're doing as well. So it's great to see already some tweets today from the regional conference there in Western Australia. So we've seen those already on our Twitter feed, and can share those with the rest of our membership. So do follow us and link to us through our social media platforms. Next slide, please. And finally, just some other initiatives that you can get involved in. We have a new quarterly e-newsletter, the CPA order paper, which is sent out to over 7,000 contacts on our database. And so if you would like to subscribe to this newsletter and aren't receiving it already, do drop us an email or sign up through our website. It's a great way to keep in touch with what's happening in the CPA. We also have our CPA Expert Roster. This is a new initiative where members and parliamentary staff can sign up to become a CPA expert. You'll become part of our database of resource persons for CPA seminars, consultancy and research projects, and will be contacted regularly about different opportunities that arise. Another way to get involved with the CPA is through our new CPA Parliamentary Academy. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Lydia, who's going to talk to you about this new initiative. Thank you.
Hi there, and thank you. And if we could just keep the presentation up, because I'll be doing the next slides, that would be great. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So as everyone has mentioned, I'm here to talk about the CPA Parliamentary Academy, and this is probably one of the most innovative things we've done for a very, very, very long time. In 110 years, I think this is the most modern approach we've taken to capacity building. So the CPA Parliamentary Academy was launched in May of this year. We have very successfully developed online courses. We currently have 9, and I'm just going to talk to you a bit about what it involves and how you yourself can get involved with learning or delivering. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this is what a screenshot of the Academy will look like. And we have the amazing Jonathan O'Day, who helpfully produced a video for us. We have developed these courses in collaboration with over 50 experts from around the Commonwealth. These include parliamentarians, speakers, clerks, experts of every kind of range of area. And as you can see, Jonathan O'Day is one of those experts that we use. If you look at the format of the Academy, and we can go to the next slide, it is an online learning tool, and the point of it is to be flexible, it's to cover a wide range of topics, but to be able to do it in your own time. A large issue we've had is that lots of academic courses, they tend to match the parliamentary calendar. So parliamentary staff and parliamentarians weren't able to actually dedicate their time to it. The CPA Academy, and especially our online learning section, is flexible. You do it in your own time. You can go through these modules that are listed on the right there and go through the lessons whenever you have free time in your calendar. We also use a variety of learning techniques. So as you see, we have videos, we have images, we have infographics. Next slide. But we also obviously have our text-based work. We also incorporate the CPA benchmarks in all of our work. That's really important to us. And if you go through the courses, you'll be able to get insight into those as well. Next slide. So currently, and launched from May, we have 9 courses. We have 4 parliamentarian courses and 5 clerks courses. Now, if you're a clerk or a parliamentarian, you're not restricted to either of those. You can do whatever course you like. If you are a parliamentarian, we always recommend that you start with the Induction for New Parliamentarians course, which is effectively like our post-selection seminars, but in a virtual online format. Next slide. I also want to talk about some of the things we have coming up, and I think these are probably really key for a lot of you. We are always trying to develop our academy, and the idea is that we will grow and expand the amount of content that is available. So coming up in 2022, we have 3 courses that are representing our networks. The CWP course will be about effective parliamentary caucuses. The CPWD course is how to get persons with disabilities accessible to parliaments. And the small branches course, we've all talked about this a lot, is about climate change action and how it particularly impacts small branches. Sorry. There are further courses that we are looking at, and these will also be launched in 2022. The Speakers and Presiding Officers course, there isn't often training on how to become a speaker, and we hope we can fill that gap. There'll also be a course for committee chairs. We will focus on sustainable development goals, and there'll be a course about that and how you as parliamentarians can achieve those goals. And then we're also collaborating with CPA UK on a Public Accounts Committee course. Now, all of these courses, we are looking to get them accredited, and that is hopefully going to happen by the end of this year. So that's fantastic news. The accreditation will be the same as Oxford University. So we are hoping to have a good amount of reach with that. All of these courses are accessible to you as CPA members for free. You can just register online whenever you want. You can send me an email, we'll set you up an account. And it's really up to you. It's your flexibility, it's how you want to learn. If you are interested in joining, as I say, just send me or CPA an email and we'll get you registered. There's also an online form on our website. And in the next year, we are looking to expand the Academy so that it will be available to non-CPA members, but at a fee. We've talked a lot about the online version, but there's also a personal in-person element of the Parliamentary Academy, and that's our residency courses. Now, obviously with COVID, we were hoping to have them this year, but that didn't happen. And luckily we are basically going to have our first residency course next year in 2022 in springtime. So do look out for that. And our residency courses are basically an expansion of the online material. They are an advanced course. They will be not your typical format. They are more a practical approach. It will be a few days of learning, but in a group atmosphere and also in a very, very practical sense. So do look out for communications on that. I will quickly end. Hopefully the video will be able to play. If our tech wizards could just play the embedded video there, I will stop talking and just show you a little video on how you can register for the Academy. Okay. With our new courses that are coming up, the idea is to work with a lot more academic experts. So there are elements of climate change that not all parliamentarians are going to know about, but actually maybe after COP they will. So our key is to always have a variety of methods to get to parliamentarians and clerks. And I do want to stress this, that this is, although we are predominantly for parliamentarians, we are focusing a lot on parliamentary staff and how they can access and support their parliament in an appropriate setting. So look out for basically. Okay, so hopefully I will stop talking and you can watch this video. Thank you very much. So that's just a short snippet of the Parliamentary Academy. And if you go on our website, there's lots more information there, so you don't have to listen to me talk about it all the time. So I think we will now pass over to questions. So I'll pass back to the host.
On 18th of July, 2021, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association will celebrate 110 years of supporting legislatures across the Commonwealth.
As well as looking back at our evolution and achievements, this year will provide a valuable opportunity.
To Stephen and to Jeffrey, that was very informative. I will now open it up to participants from the floor if there are any questions for CPA HQ.
Competition for Commonwealth youth.
Is creativity competition?
We have a question. Thank you.
Good morning to our friends in London. John Dawkins, President of the Legislative Council in South Australia. A number of years ago, I had the privilege of being involved in the development of human rights networks in the various regions of the Commonwealth, which was a joint venture between the CPA and the Commonwealth Secretariat. And some of that work was at a conference in Wellington, another one at Colombo that I had the privilege of being part of, and I know there was work in Africa and Asia and the Pacific, and I just wondered what the development, what is the ongoing relationship between the CPA and the Commonwealth Secretariat in general, but specifically in the relationship of those networks. We established one of those networks in the South Australian Parliament, which is had a little bit of hesitancy for a while, but it's because I've tried to hand it on to new people as I leave the Parliament soon. But anyway, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful to the Honourable Dawkins for raising this question, because when we consulted on the strategic plan, there was a lot of support for the CPA to do more work around questions of human rights. And I was delighted to hear that. It was music to my ears. When I did some research, I then came across the work that the Honourable President has just referred to, and clearly some very serious partnership activity had happened between the Commonwealth Secretariat and the CPA, developing a number of declarations regarding the role that parliamentarians can play with regard to human rights. So what we're doing now is resuming that piece of work, which hadn't moved forward for some time, to be honest, previously. The Executive Committee, EXCO, has agreed to establish a working group on human rights with a representative from each of our regions. And we have the first meeting of that working group later this month. And one of the things we're going to look at is what are the practical ways in which parliamentarians can advance human rights. How can they hold their governments to account on human rights, both domestically, but also internationally with regard to human rights challenges across the globe. And we're going to do that as the CPA. But I have, to answer the broader question, discussed this with the Commonwealth Secretariat. We do have a very good working relationship between CPA headquarters and the Commonwealth Secretariat. We work together on a very wide range of issues, including on questions to do with human rights. And they are particularly keen that we resume this work on human rights. So if I might thank the Honourable Dawkins for his role previously, and I might follow up with him because it is useful to get a sense from some of the previous discussions of how that went. But I am very keen that we take this work forward because clearly we face some very significant human rights challenges across the world today. Thank you.
Any further questions from the floor? Are there any questions from those participating online? I've got a couple here. Stephen, could you please answer this question? How will the registration email be provided for the Academy? And can you explain why we're having issues having Australian phone numbers recognised on the CPRS research application site?
Okay, well, on the second of those questions, let me take that away. I didn't know about that, and I apologise, and I will discuss that with colleagues. But on the first, if I can ask Lydia to respond on the question relating to the Academy.
Hi, yeah, so to register for the Academy, you can use the online form. You can send an email to CPA HQ, and we will give you a personal account. So the account will include your username, which is normally your parliamentary email address, and an individualized password. And that is unique to you, and we send that to you directly. So it's pretty standard. You will then sign into the account, and if you have any questions, you just email us. But please feel free to email me if you have any more questions about the Academy and how you register.
Thank you, Lydia. We have another question from Senator Sue Lyons. A question for you, Stephen. Could you please explain what is happening with the timeframes for the Sustainable Development Goals, given the impact of the pandemic on women, and what is the role of CPA in supporting and meeting these goals?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sue. And I think one of the things that came through very, very strongly when we consulted on the strategic plan was a desire to give the Sustainable Development Goals and UN Agenda 2030 greater prominence in the work of the CPA going forwards. And I'm very keen that we do that. I'm keen that we do it in a way that doesn't duplicate what others are doing. But I come at this with a very particular perspective, having served previously when I was a British Member of Parliament as chair of the UK House of Commons International Development Committee, and we did a lot of work there on the SDGs. I think parliaments have such an important part to play, both national and subnational parliaments, in holding their governments to account on the SDGs as a whole. And for those that are donor countries to low-income countries, holding governments to account in terms of their international development strategies as well. Now, obviously, the thing about the SDGs is it's such an enormous agenda. The obvious goal for us to start with is Global Goal 16, SDG 16, which covers issues around good governance and the rule of law. So we will have a particular focus there. But I think, as you rightly say, SDG 5 on gender equality will always be a key priority for us, with the important work we do and the role that the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians plays within our organisation. But I'm keen that we go beyond that if we can. And as you rightly say, we've seen the impact of the pandemic on poverty and inequality, the impact of the pandemic obviously on health, but also on education. So we've been doing a lot more partnership work with others with regard to Global Goal 4 on achieving universal quality education. What we want to try to do is to provide very, very practical support. And that is why, as Lydia set out, 2 of the new courses that we're going to develop for the Academy for launch next year. One will be a small branches course with a focus on climate action, and the other will be a more general course on the SDGs. And this will try to provide practical ways in which parliamentarians can take action on the SDGs, both at a parliamentary level with regard to their own governments, but also at a community level, and what can be done in constituencies and locally, including with local government, to take the SDGs forward. You don't need me to tell you that the Agenda 2030 was always going to be a really, really hard agenda to fulfill. And as you rightly say, Sue, the pandemic has made that even tougher. But I hope that the world will focus back again on the SDGs going forward, and we can play our part in that. And if members who are here today, either now or beyond the conversation we're having, have ideas about practical things that we can do, please do say. And coming back to Jeff's presentation, if there are examples where the SDGs have been used effectively in any of the member parliaments in Australia or the Pacific, we always welcome the opportunity to showcase those examples in the Parliamentarian or as blogs or in other ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from our online participants? Are there any further questions? I think that concludes our questions. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you all for joining us in our conference today. It's very clear to all of us that you're working very hard to support us to be able to support those that we are here to serve in the Parliament. All of your work sounds very interesting, and thank you for sharing that with us. And we look forward to being in touch and sharing the good news that we're all doing across the Australian Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker Arquette. Thank you.
Delegates, we are a few minutes early, I believe, before our break, and we will be having some refreshments in the courtyard. To those who are online, we will see you back. We are coming back at 2:45 p.m. today. We'll see you then.